What does a dream of stabbing someone mean? Seeing yourself holding a knife and stabbing somebody, either wounding them or killing them, can make for quite traumatic dreams. Don't be surprised if you wake up all of a sudden after seeing yourself in some sort of knife fight, whether you're stabbing somebody intentionally or you're stabbing somebody or you're stabbing in self-defense. Holding that knife and possibly seeing blood is enough to wake anybody up in a cold sweat. But what does stabbing somebody in your dreams truly mean? Again, just like with all other dream interpretations in this blog, you have to focus on context. It all depends on what others' symbols are present when you see yourself holding that knife and stabbing. What does it mean to dream of stabbing someone? Generally speaking, when you see yourself holding a knife and forcefully and intentionally stabbing somebody in your dream, it indicates expressing long simmering resentments or strong emotions. This is not a happy situation. I think that's obvious. You have given in to your negative emotions to the point that there seems to be no other way to express what you're feeling. And this leads to a tremendous amount of frustration. Your adrenaline is pumping, you're stressed out, and you feel desperate. Knife fighting dreams are expressions of desperation. There are certain areas in your waking life where you feel you have no other choice. But in reality, if you step back and take a look at the big picture, you do have a choice. People who are in the same situation as you, regardless of whatever it is that is stressing you out, maybe it's your relationships, your situation at work, or the amount of money you make, or the amount of money you have to pay in bills, don't respond with such strong emotions. They don't feel hopeless. They don't feel desperate. They definitely don't feel helpless. It's really important to keep in mind that just because you're going through these tough times, that your thoughts, as toxic and negative as some of them may be, don't necessarily have to be true. You have a lot more control over your situation than you give yourself credit for. When you see yourself waking up from stabbing dreams or experiencing these strong dream imagery, you need to listen to your subconscious. The real message here is to look at the big picture. Take some sort of emotional audit or mental audit and see what you're really dealing with. Because if you just let yourself go with your emotions, it's very easy to get caught up in patterns where there are self-fulfilling prophecies. Your worst instincts take over and things spiral out of control, and before you know it, the worst scenario or the worst things that you could ever imagine take place. You have to understand that the big difference between a person who seems to have it all together and who seems to be living their best life and a person who is just completely falling apart and their life is a complete disaster is often just one day. That's right, only one bad day separates those two people. Always remember that and be prepared for such days because you have a lot more control over the outcome than you care to imagine. What does it mean to dream of attempting to stab someone? This type of dream imagery is not as bad as actually picking up a knife and running it through somebody. The focus here is on the attempt. The focus here is on the amount of time it takes to form the thoughts and then let yourself be worked up by emotions and then following through with it with physical action. Each chain in this process, or each link, symbolizes areas of control. Things don't have to spiral out of control. You have a lot more control over the process than you give yourself credit for. Focus on that. Your subconscious is telling you that you are just attempting. So you can hold things back. You can consider your other options. You can just say no. You can just flat out put yourself out of the equation and say to yourself, there are better ways to deal with this. The problem with life is that a lot of times we find ourselves saying and doing things we later feel sorry about because we feel at that point that we don't have other choices, or we just want to rush to some sort of outcome. For example, you're really angry at somebody, so you give them a piece of your mind. You know that there's probably better ways to couch your words, or possibly even wait until you're in a better mood. But you don't want to do that because you want the rush of vindication. You want to just get stuff off your chest and give them a piece of your mind because they deserve it. When your mind is showing you that you are attempting to stab someone, your subconscious is telling you that there is a kind of a delay function, or there is some sort of time lag before the effects of what you're thinking manifest themselves into a horrible reality. This is an opportunity to really take a deep breath, think about your other options, or simply just force yourself to say, I'm not going to deal with this right now. I have that option. I can choose to do that. I'm not going to deal with this right now. I'm not losing out when I do that. I'm not losing anything. I'm not less of a person. I'll just kick the can down the road. Now, a lot of people who put themselves in an impossible situation by telling themselves that they're less of a person, or they're cowards, or they are simply just avoiding reality by not dealing with the situation as it presents itself, are not doing themselves any favors. It is no surprise that those people keep making the same bad decision again and again. Don't be one of those people. You can choose to just hold off. Sure, you may feel that you're going to lose out a little bit, but think about how much more you will lose if you just let your emotions get the better of you. What does it mean to dream of stabbing someone in the back? The classic definition of stabbing somebody in the back, of course, involves betrayal. They're going about their day, they're doing their thing, and you caught them unawares. They're very vulnerable, and you stick it to where it hurts. When you see yourself stabbing somebody in the back in your dream, your subconscious is telling you that you are afraid of your vulnerabilities. This act has little to do with you betraying somebody else. Instead, it's a projection of your own insecurities and vulnerabilities. You feel that you are weak in a certain area of your life, or there is a situation or a memory that you hope other people won't know. You think that once other people find out, that they have something over you, that they can hold it over you to somehow manipulate you or control you. This has little to do with betrayal and has everything to do with insecurities. The simple solution here is quite straightforward, and you probably already know this. Just be upfront. For example, if you got a job and it turns out that you kind of exaggerated your experience or listed skills that you're not exactly an expert in, be upfront with it. Be open to learn. Be open to criticism. But if you double down, chances are the worst case scenario that you've been afraid of happening, that you're scared of or afraid of seeing play out, will play out. Because you cannot cover a lie with another lie and expect a nice outcome. It doesn't work that way. So you have to nip this in the bud by simply choosing to be as honest as you can. Now, does this mean that you can just say the naked truth to people across the board and expect a happy outcome? I'm sorry to say, but it doesn't work that way. You also have to be diplomatic. You also have to be subtle when subtlety is needed. Put simply, this means that you have to read people. And there is a proper time for everything. There is a proper context. Still, honesty is the best policy. Otherwise, you're going to be always afraid that somehow, some way, you will be found out and you will end up getting stabbed. At the moment that you are least ready for it, and at the moment where it can inflict the most damage. This is a really rough mindset to have. Talk about walking on eggshells. Talk about an almost paralyzing sense of fear and anxiety and insecurity. What does it mean to dream of stabbing someone in self-defense? When you see yourself stabbing somebody because they attacked you first, it may seem like a straightforward dream narrative. Don't let it fool you. People are very skilled in presenting themselves as victims of circumstances, when in reality, they're the ones who started it. They're the ones who were the aggressors. They're the ones who were actually giving other people a hard time. Funny how that works. When you see yourself dreaming of stabbing someone in self-defense and the focus of your dream is the fact that you acted in self-defense, you might want to think twice. Your subconscious is telling you that you may be playing the victim in situations where you don't need to, because it's holding you back. It's keeping you from growing as a person. You have to take responsibility. Even if it's true that there's a person or a group of people in your life that are grinding you down, giving you a hard time, or flat out abusing you, this doesn't absolve you of the responsibility of figuring out what you did. How do you contribute to this? Sometimes choosing to be around those people is your contribution. Refusing to let them go for whatever reason is your contribution. And you can't, if you find yourself in that situation, you can't then turn around and tell yourself, well, I'm the victim here. You're not doing yourself any favors. If anything, seeing yourself stabbing someone in self-defense is your subconscious is telling you that you need to be more accountable to yourself. How can you get out of these tricky situations? How can you change your mindset so you're less likely to find yourself in these situations? Otherwise, you're going to be left consoling yourself with this comfortable fiction that somehow, some way, you're some sort of victim. That can only take you so far. Plus, that can only last so long. What does it mean to dream of stabbing someone you know? If in the dream the focus is on the fact that you are familiar with this person, this indicates that people around you are grating you. They're getting to your nerves. And you're having a tough time because these are people who are near and dear to you. You truly love them. And based on what you could see, They truly love you, but the problem is they're making you miserable. Maybe you're in a codependent relationship. Maybe you navigate your family relationships in terms of obligations, duties, responsibilities, that kind of thing. Whatever the case may be, it's not working because you're miserable. The familiarity is making you feel that you really have no other options. You have to hang on to these people. You feel obligated to them. But at the same time, you know the damage that they are doing to you. Maybe you feel that you're not moving on with life. You're not taking on better jobs, making more money, or simply just living up to your fullest potential because you feel that you are chained to these people. Your subconscious is telling you that you need to be aware of proper boundaries. Maybe you have a tough time saying no. You have to understand that if you suffer from some sort of martyr complex, you're not doing anybody any favors, least of all yourself. Do you think the people that you are nurturing, protecting, providing for, and otherwise handling on a self-sacrificial level on a day-to-day basis will die when you leave the picture? Unless they're children, the chances of that happening is very low. You have to let go. You have to set healthy boundaries. You have to reach a point where you can say to them, I can help you only up to this point. Most importantly, you have to let them know that you can only help them if they help themselves. Otherwise, you're going to be trapped in this codependency, downward spiral, and everybody loses. If you don't believe me, pay attention to the people that you've been nurturing all this time. Are they as independent as they should be? Are they taking necessary risks? Are they making the right plans? Chances are they're not. Why? Because they're leaning on you. They know that you will take care of them, so why try? You're not doing them any favors because they're refusing to grow. A lot of the times, the best way to see somebody soar is to gently and kindly push them out of the nest. What does it mean to dream of stabbing a loved one? The main focus of the stabbing dream is the fact that you love the person. Love is one of the biggest virtues in most societies. But love is often misunderstood. In fact, if you turn on the radio or your streaming service on your phone, chances are you will come across a song that will mention the word love. There's just too many of them. The problem is, the more we hear the word love, the more confused we are as to its real meaning. It dies every time it's repeated because its meaning becomes even more cryptic and mysterious. When you have a dream of stabbing a loved one and the focus of your dream is the fact that this person is somebody you love deeply, your subconscious is trying to send you a very important message regarding your definition of love. It may be suffocating, it may be stifling, and the worst part of all is the number one person it's holding back is not the person you are quote-unquote loving, it is you. A lot of us suffer from disordered love. We think that if we focus on just one person in our lives and we put everything that we have onto that person, that we would have a fulfilling life. Well, here's the problem. You can only give what you have. And if you don't love yourself enough to develop some sort of self-respect, a series of competencies and skills, then your ability to love others goes down the toilet. Again, you can only give what you have. And if you neglect yourself, what exactly do you have to offer? And this then turns into some sort of game you play with yourself where you're thinking, I'm giving everything to this person, so I expect everything from this person. Do you see how wrong that is? Basically, you are expecting things from that person that you should have been giving to yourself or expecting from yourself. And this is where all sorts of dysfunctional relationships come in. And I don't care whether it's your child, your romantic partner, or whoever else. This also applies to your relationship to your job or your career. Your subconscious is telling you when you see yourself stabbing a loved one that you have to re-examine how you define love. And it all begins with a healthy definition of self-love. Because that's where it all flows. Is it rooted in reality? Are your expectations justified? Because when you focus on devoting enough resources and time to yourself, then you will develop the kind of love that you can share with others. It is a mature love. It is not some sort of love that is totally dependent on other people's validation. You're not really loving when you do that. What you're doing is you're trying to love yourself through other people. You're using them as some sort of mediating device. You're not really loving them for them. Instead, you're looking for yourself. Do you see how sick this is? Do you see how this leads to all sorts of problems down the road? What does it mean to dream of stabbing a friend? The focus here is on familiarity. When we have friends, we can easily look at them as supplying something that we don't have. We look at them as extensions of our egos in a weird way. For example, if you have A, B, and C, and you look at somebody else who has a D and E, you can look at that person as a friend, not because of anything that they bring to the table or who they really are, but because of the fact that you can convert them to providing D and E. Either they have it right then and there, or you feel that you can mold them so they can give you what you need. Neither of the situations is good because at the end of the day, people are ends in of themselves. They're not means to some sort of objective. They're not means to some sort of self-completion. They just are. The best kinds of friends are friends that do nothing for you. They don't open doors. They don't bring opportunities. They definitely don't bring money. A lot of people may be thinking, wow, what useless friends. After all, your network often determines your net worth. What exactly do these people bring to the table? If that is your mindset, then you need to pay close attention to your values. Maybe the reason why you are frustrated in a certain area of your life is you view people as ends, as means to an end, not ends in of themselves. This is a call for maturity in your friendships and social networks. And it's also a call for independence. Be strong in yourself. Be independent. Don't think that just because you're friends with the right person, and this person is somebody you normally wouldn't care about, that it would lead to some sort of material blessing. Instead, cultivate friendships based on genuine liking. They don't have to bring you some sort of physical or financial payback. Instead, look at them as people you're comfortable with, people that make you smile, and that you can also satisfy and joke around with. In other words, take people in as they are. And you'll be surprised as to how much of a blessing this is, because this forces you to stand on your own two legs and to be a fully mature and developed person with a lot to share, and more importantly, with a mind that is mature enough to be able to take what other people are sharing. Because when you're with the right friends, they too will be sharing. But you shouldn't base your friendship on that transactional model of you're only my friend because you do something for me that I need, like money, status, information, and knowledge. You can be friends with them just because of who they are. Now, you may be thinking this is completely useless. Not quite. Because people who make you feel really comfortable in your skin and you feel accepted and you belong, even though they don't bring any money to the table, might be doing enough for you so you can rise up to your potential. It is precisely because you feel accepted and you belong somewhere in this world, thanks to your friends, that you're able to put in the work, take the necessary risks, and seize the right opportunities to live up to your fullest potential. And I'm not just talking about your business, your net worth, or your career. I'm also talking about your relationships, your health, as well as your spiritual maturity. Never underestimate the power of friendship. But this all begins, of course, with finding the right friends. And the only way to do that is to have the right motivations. What does it mean to dream of stabbing a family member? If the main focus of your dream is the fact that you stabbed a family member, this is an issue of identity. You're stabbing somebody of your own blood, and you're drawing blood when you physically assault that person with a knife. This is a very rich dream with all sorts of symbols stacked one on top of the other. And it really can all be summed up in a question of identity. A lot of people define their identity based on DNA. DNA can be tracked, of course, to different parts of the world. If you have 40% Irish blood, then you look at the map and you see Ireland, and you draw all sorts of conclusions. You think back to the times when the British colonized Ireland and all the hardships that caused. You can also think back to the many different places in the world where the Irish emigrated. You can even focus on the literary as well as cultural contributions Irish people have brought to the table, not just in the English-speaking world, but to the rest of the planet. I could go on and on. That's one way of looking at your bloodline or blood identity. Another way to look at it is one of provenance. That's just a fancy way of saying, where does one thing belong? Where does it come from? And I'm talking about families. There are many cases where people who thought that they were descended from somebody because of the long chain of their fathers passing on their genes to their grandfathers and into the fathers after them, the sons after them. But in reality, they're actually descended from somebody else. When thinking of identity, please understand that identity is a combination of the past and the present. The past only has value, if we're completely honest with ourselves, based on how we presently read our frustrations, our hopes and dreams, and aspirations onto them. In other words, the past is always a captive of the present. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, the past is the past. It is objective reality that nobody could change. Don't be quite so sure, because something may have objectively happened, but it will only have power and meaning based on how you read it in the here and now. That's why I can confidently say that the past is always a captive of the present. And if you can understand that, then you can see how the future is tied into all of this. Because how you read the past today and how you view things or categorize things as being true and untrue has a tremendous effect on how you see yourself and how you project yourself into the future. What your hopes and dreams could be, what your priorities should be, so on and so forth. When you see yourself stabbing a family member in your dream, all of this is implicated because it's all about identity in terms of the past being brought to bear on the present and having to make sense in the present so you can then forecast it into the future. Just how important is this personal history? Well, let's take a story. Imagine you had amnesia. Like all your memory has just been wiped out. What do you think will happen? Well, first of all, you're going to be a blank slate. As long as you know the basics, your language, how to breathe, how to go to the bathroom, you're a blank slate. A lot of people find this terrifying, so they don't know where to begin. I look at it as an amazing opportunity. It really is, because you're starting from zero. You can learn new skills. You can create a new identity. You can create a new future. So it really all depends on how you look at it, because a lot of people grapple with their identity, think that whatever happened in the past, from trauma in the family destiny, historical baggage, I'm talking about discrimination, oppression, sexual abuse, that kind of thing, is necessarily going to be pushed into the future. Otherwise, you're not being realistic. Otherwise, you're not dealing with reality as it exists. But are you really? Because if you think that your past necessarily has to dictate your present, you're missing something. You seriously are. You're neglecting the fact that you have power to hold the past captive. The way you interpret it, the way you act on it, the way you make it make sense are all expressions of your personal power. It really blows my mind that very few people realize this and much less take advantage of it. You have that kind of power. Your past does not have to define you. They don't have to, whatever happened to you in the past doesn't have to shackle you. What does it mean to dream of getting hurt in a dream of stabbing someone? This is a dream of feedback. And it is really important to keep in mind that for every action, there is going to be a reaction. It is also important to understand how this all plays out. It's not as straightforward as you think. It definitely isn't set in stone where you feel that you're just this person who just takes certain actions by every single day that you cannot explain, and you're forced to live the life that you have. If it were only that simple, then we'd all have an excuse. But we don't. The truth is, everything that you can perceive from the world around you, from the things that you see, hear, touch, taste, and smell, are all neutral. How they achieve meaning is your mindset. Think of all the stimuli coming in through all your senses, filtered through this box called your mindset. That's how you interpret and navigate reality. And then once your mindset interprets that information, you start judging it. This is where your feelings come in. And your feelings are never neutral. because ultimately it leads to action. And that's when the world sits up and pays attention, because when you take action, there is going to be a reaction. This is how people change their world. The world doesn't really care about your emotions and your feelings. Everybody's got that. It definitely doesn't care about your aspirations, hopes, and dreams. Again, this stuff is usually just floating between your ears. But when you start taking action, maybe you fill out a job form, or maybe you start going out and meeting people, talking to them, or you start hitting the gym. That's when the world pays attention, because you unleash a chain reaction. And if you keep it up, for example, going to the gym regularly, you start with once a week, then twice a week, then before you know it, you're there every day. You best believe that when you look in the mirror, there will be an effect. Your subconscious is telling you that when you dream of getting hurt after you stabbed somebody, that you have to be more mindful of the reaction that you unleash. You're not as helpless or powerless as you imagine yourself to be. Let me put it this way. If you want the world's reaction to change, just change your actions. Now, this is what is so difficult for a lot of people, because this is easier said than done. Change your actions. Most people can do a one-time, big-time kind of thing where they can be so frustrated and so disgusted with the results that they get on a day-to-day basis that they say, okay, today I'm going to change. I'm going to do things different. I'm going to go to the gym. I'm going to talk to that girl that I've been avoiding. I think she's cute, but I'm so afraid of rejection that I avoid her. You're going to do that action. You're going to take that bold move. But you do that once, or you face rejection, and then you shrink back. That is not taking action. You have to keep doing it. You have to build momentum. That's how you unleash the power of changed action, because you're sick and tired of the reactions that you are getting. Do you see how this works? There is no space for one-time, big-time actions. What does it mean to dream of stabbing someone and being stabbed? It's one thing to stab somebody and end up hurting yourself. Maybe you held the knife at the handle and you got so excited that your grip slipped and you end up holding the blade. Sure, you cut that other person, but you also hurt yourself. It happens. But when you see yourself being actively stabbed by the person you're trying to stab, this is an indication of bad planning or remorse. You're trying to make changes in your life. You're trying to take action. But you didn't plan for what comes next. You didn't fully prepare. And a lot of people fail because they did not come fully prepared. They didn't shoot to achieve some sort of momentum. They don't look to build some sort of system. This is especially true when you're trying to create a business or run a business. They think that they just need to take action and everything will fall into place. If only things were that simple. Life normally doesn't work that way. Not only do you have to be consistent, but you also have to be aware that there will be setbacks, and you better be prepared for those setbacks. Otherwise, you're either going to be waiting for other people to get their act together, and this is how a lot of people deal with that kind of thing. What do you think happens? That's right, they'll be waiting for a long time. Other people, they just lose heart because they think, that I have all these plans and they didn't pan out for whatever reason. Maybe the plans were wrong. Maybe I should just go back to what I was doing before. None of these situations is good. And all of them could easily have been fixed if you just had a backup plan, if you just were prepared. Let me put it this way. If you're trying to get into a house, if you try the front door one day and it's locked, you can keep knocking. And after enough knocks and nothing happens, you can try the side door, the basement door. You can even climb up the wall and try the door on one of the top stories. And if that doesn't work out, and for whatever reason nothing is happening, you can try the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that. Days can turn to weeks, and weeks can turn to months. But eventually, your persistence will pay off. This takes character. This is what builds you. This is what matures you. So don't freak out when there is some sort of bad reaction. Be ready for it. Have a plan. Have a plan behind a plan behind a plan. And before you know it, your journey will start to change you for the better. What does the type of weapon in a dream about stabbing someone indicate? To stab somebody, you can have a wide range of options. After all, to stab somebody, you just need something sharp enough to break the surface hardness of their skin. You can stab somebody with a dagger, which is specifically designed for that kind of thing. You could also stab somebody with a kitchen knife, which is normally used for cutting meat, potatoes, and vegetables. You can also try an ice pick, a screwdriver, and all sorts of devices in between. But it has to be long, narrow enough, and has to have some sort of sharp enough edge. What I need you to focus on is that the intention behind the device doesn't have to be one of stabbing. Your subconscious is trying to let you know that you have to be more creative in how you go about your life. This is what the dream of weapon type in stabbing dreams mean. Your subconscious is detecting the fact that you seem to be hitting yourself on a wall. You're banging your head in desperation against the wall. Nothing seems to happen. The motivation is there. There may be some sort of plan. Everything seems to line up, but here's the problem. You don't have any creativity. As I mentioned earlier, persistence can take you far. Again, you can try the front door, then the back door, then the basement, then the top, so on and so forth. But persistence is not enough. If you are trying to achieve something with the same tool that you don't bother to change, your journey is going to be far longer than it needs to be, or it's just not going to happen. Whatever outcome you're looking for simply isn't going to materialize because you are not properly equipped for it. Your subconscious is telling you to be versatile, be creative, because a lot of the times the things that we have around us are actually the things that will get us over. For instance, my wife bought a painting, and for whatever reason, we couldn't find the hammer. So I took off my shoe and hammered the nail with the sole of my shoe. Thankfully, my shoe sole was tough enough to be able to drive the hammer through the wood wall. Now I have this nice painting hanging in my office. Ask anybody, a shoe is not a hammer. When asked to list things that people can use to hammer nails, most people wouldn't pick a shoe. They'll pick something else, something closer to the appearance, weight, and design of a hammer. But using my shoe got the job done. You should think of the same way. You should think the same way. You have to look at whatever resources you have available to you in a completely new way, because they may actually be the tools that you need to get ahead, to achieve some sort of objective or to basically just get over your frustrations. Maybe you feel you're not making enough money every single month. Maybe your relationship is on the rocks. Maybe you look at the mirror and you see somebody who could lose a few pounds. Look at your resources in a different way. They may reveal the tools that you need, because right now you're waiting. You're waiting for that perfect hammer to fix the problem. But for whatever reason, it's not happening. So you have to be more creative. When your subconscious dwells on the type of weapon you're using in your stabbing dream, this is your clue to be more creative. Don't be afraid to improvise. Don't be afraid to try one experiment after another. Eventually, you will find something that works. What is the meaning of a knife in a dream of stabbing someone? If the main focus of your dream is the knife, pay close attention to how precise you are in how you think. A lot of people are sloppy thinkers. Sloppy thinking makes for sloppy living. If you think that there's really no ideal way to solve whatever challenges you face day to day, don't be all that surprised if you find yourself settling for mediocre results. It comes with the territory, because you haven't given yourself permission to achieve ideal results. When you stab somebody with a knife, chances are that knife was specifically designed for that outcome. You're looking for a device that will draw blood, that will be efficient, will take less effort, and inflict maximum damage. That requires specific design. It requires focus. It requires foresight. People who dream primarily of the knife in stabbing dreams are people who are struggling with foresight issues. They're frustrated because they feel that their life is not working out. You took on that job and the promotion is taking much longer than you had thought. You're going out with this person, and at first things were exciting and fun, but it seems that you're having a tough time communicating with each other or even trusting each other at a deep level. I could go on. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that you are maybe using something that isn't properly designed for that, or you don't even have the first clue as to how to do things in the most efficient and effective way possible. So your subconscious is telling you, be more deliberate, be more intentional. Maybe the reason why your relationships suffer is because you don't have a good idea of what a great relationship is in the first place. Guess what? It's not on the person you're with. It's on you. Do you see how this works? So be more deliberate as to the outcome you want. And then, because if you are clear on this level, it then will dictate how you're supposed to act, how you're supposed to expect things, and everything will basically flow from that. What does the body symbolize in a dream of stabbing someone? If the focus of your dream is the body of the person that you're just ramming this sharp object into, your subconscious is trying to draw your attention to your personality and identity. How do you define targets? A lot of the times, if you're like most other people, you project yourself onto others around you. For the most part, this works because, hey, let's face it, in terms of hardware, we're pretty much the same. We have 2 eyes, 1 nose, 2 arms. Pretty straightforward. But this can only go so far. Because when you are trying to achieve better relationships or to achieve better outcomes in many areas of your life, you have to think about your identity as something distinct and unique to yourself. Most people can wrap their heads around this, but what follows is more complicated. If you are unique and you're entitled to your own expression, you're entitled to your own thoughts, it necessarily follows that other people are equally as unique. They're not extensions of you. They're definitely not clones. And unfortunately, when you see yourself stabbing someone in your dream and the focus is their body, you are projecting your identity and ego to the rest of the world in the worst way possible. In other words, you're looking at the world really as an extension of your body. If you are frustrated, or if you feel that you are not getting great results, or if you're suffering illness, this has to do with that kind of mindset. You have to look at other people as unique. You have to look at situations as requiring a deeper level of analysis. Because they're not extensions of you. They're not familiar places. They're not familiar spaces. They're different. They require a higher level of respect. And that's why it's really important for you to focus first on your identity and identify what makes you unique and respect that uniqueness, and then project that uniqueness to others. I know it's kind of rough at first because a lot of us are still emotional and mental babies. And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's just how we are. Because it worked for so long, then it's so easy to just project it into the future until, of course, we meet with a challenge or a frustration that we would like to overcome. And if we feel stuck in that situation for a long time, then things might build up for an intense amount of time for us to want to break through. So this is your breakthrough moment. Give yourself this opportunity. That body that you see in your stabbing dream is not your body. Respect it as different. Respect it with the uniqueness and autonomy that you give yourself. If you're able to do that and you do it consistently, then progress is possible. What does it mean if a child has nightmares of stabbing someone? If you're a child and you're dreaming of stabbing somebody and it's really freaking you out, your subconscious is really telling you about the independence that you need to practice as an adult. This reminds me of a very famous story in Hindu religious tradition. It's called the Bhagavad Gita. There's a story of the blue-skinned deity, Krishna. He was the driver of a chariot. And his boss, who was supposed to fire arrows at the opposing army, is hesitating because he told Krishna, "These are my blood relatives. If I win this battle, it is only because I killed my own flesh and blood." He was in a tough spot. And what the Bhagavad Gita is saying is that through life, we're going to be put in tight positions where when we're doing our day-to-day activities to provide for ourselves, provide for our families, and just basically keep body and soul together, there are going to be tough situations that involve hard choices. And of course, the Bhagavad Gita shows an exaggerated choice. Krishna's answer was, as long as you practice bhakti, B-H-A-K-T-I, or devotion, this purifies whatever it is you're doing. because your heart is in the right place. When you are a child having nightmares of stabbing someone, you don't necessarily have to be a physical child. Your subconscious may be speaking to your inner child. And there are situations where you have to make a decision. And as long as your heart is in the right place, and usually virtues like truth, honesty, courage, and service to others, you will be are such basis. You will be able to make it through. It's not, a lot of times it's not clean and comfortable. It can be really messy. But part of the process of going from an inner child or infant to a full-grown mental and spiritual adult involves such hard choices, because you're going to step on a lot of toes. In many cases, it's your own family that is holding you back based on their expectations and assumptions of you. A lot of the times, it's the traditions or culture that's surrounding you. But you're going to have to break through that. You're going to have to stick to the virtues that you consciously have chosen to follow. And this requires intentionality and consistency. It's very scary, especially if you have an inner child that refuses to grow up. But just like the archer in the Bhagavad Gita, you have to move ahead. You have to move on. Are your dreams of stabbing someone a reflection of your anxieties? This is just a part of the picture. Anxieties play a big role, but they can also impact your hopes and dreams. Most importantly, they also impact your identity. Stabbing dreams speak to your mindset and how you order reality. One very important sub-theme that you need to focus on is that these types of dreams also speak to what you love. Do you suffer from disordered love? Are you loving the things you should hate? Are you loving number 3 instead of number 1? So by getting your head clear about these issues, you start putting together a map, and you both come up with a better knife and a better plan, and you end up engaging the world in such a way that not only benefits you, but also benefits it. So instead of cutting to harm, or cutting to get ahead, or cutting to take from somebody, you start to cut to heal. You start to cut loads that burden others. You start to cut off tumors. Do you see how this works? It's the same knife, but the outcome cannot be any more different.